These are the most interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Thomas Edison in the laboratory in Newark, New Jersey, 1870. Here he created telegraphic equipment and stock tickers, laying the foundation for his further inventive activities. This period marked the beginning of his path to industrial development. In 2016, a mousetrap made in 1861 went off at the Museum of English Rural Life in Reading. Colin Pullinger Design & Sons, known as the Eternal Mousetrap, caught a mouse 155 years after its release. The mechanism is based on the principle of a self-locking camera and turned out to be fully operational after a century and a half. Annie is the first boat launched on Yellowstone Lake, 1871. The picture was taken by William Henry Jackson during the Hayden Geological Expedition. Using this boat allowed the researchers to explore the lake and its shores in detail for the first time. A German soldier lights a cigarette for a British prisoner of war, circa 1916-1918. The scene was recorded on the field of the First World War, presumably in the area of the dressing station. Recruiting soldiers for the war with Spain shortly after the explosion of the battleship Maine in 1898. The tragedy in Havana triggered the outbreak of the Spanish-American War and caused a massive influx of volunteers. The snapshot captures the first days of mobilization. The Ford V8 car in which Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow were shot in 1934 is on display today in Primm, Nevada. The car was preserved with numerous bullet holes left after the ambush. This exhibit has become one of the most famous symbols of the gangster era in the USA. Dental key, France, 1800-1840. This tool was used to remove teeth long before the advent of anesthesia. According to dental historians, it was he who caused more injuries than all the other extraction devices of the 19th century combined. The fallen statue of Louis Agassiz after the earthquake in San Francisco, Stanford University, 1906. Strong tremors knocked the sculpture off the facade of the building, and it stood upside down on the sidewalk. Soldiers of the 82nd Airborne Division advanced behind a tank in a snowstorm. Eresbach, Belgium, January 28, 1945. The picture captures the harsh winter battles during the Ardennes offensive. The units moved forward despite the difficult weather conditions. Traveling drug dealer in Oklahoma, 1895. Such sellers offered universal remedies for a variety of diseases, often without scientific justification. Their visits were part of the daily life of the American countryside at the end of the 19th century. Downtown Los Angeles, filmed in 1901 and 2001, exactly 100 years apart. At the beginning of the 20th century, it was a small village with sparse buildings, and by the 21st century, one of the largest megacities in the world with a modern business district had grown up here. The building of the Northwestern Express and Transportation Karmstier, 1880s. The company was engaged in the transportation of passengers and cargo in the Wild West, before the spread of railways. The snapshot reflects the scale and importance of the stagecoach lines in the development of the territory. A soldier points to a warning sign on the Western Front, France, circa 1914-1918. The inscription required moving slowly so as not to raise dust, which could attract enemy artillery fire. View of London after the bombing, 1940. In the foreground are the ruins of neighborhoods destroyed by Luftwaffe raids, against which the surviving dome of St. Paul's Cathedral stands. This contrast became a symbol of the city's resilience during the Blitz. Farewell of relatives from North and South Korea after the meeting of families separated by the Korean War. At the time of this event, they had been separated for over 57 years. These brief meetings were a rare opportunity for loved ones to see each other again. An advertisement for the Titanic's voyage from New York to Great Britain, April 1912. The White Star Line Company offered passengers unprecedented comfort: a swimming pool, Turkish baths, a gym, and a la carte restaurant. This flight never took place. The ship sank on its first voyage after colliding with an iceberg. The ancient Panathenaic Stadium in Athens, on the opening day of the first modern Olympic Games, 1896. Thousands of spectators gathered here to see the revival of the ancient tradition in an international format. A woman works with a rotary hammer to process U.S. Census data circa the 1890s. The card system made it possible to speed up the calculation and storage of information, becoming an important step in the development of computing technology. The front page of the New York Times on December 7, 1941, reported on the Japanese attack on the United States and Great Britain and the attack on Pearl Harbor. The title captures the beginning of the Pacific War and the entry of the United States into World War II. This day has gone down in history as the day that will remain in disgrace. Cattle market at Ballybrickengreen Square, Waterford, Ireland, circa 1910. Farmers and traders gathered here to buy and sell animals, which was an important part of the rural economy. In the background, a mobile tea and coffee shop is visible, serving visitors to the fair. First-class dining room on the SS Grosser Kurfürst, circa 1900. The interior is decorated in a rich style with carved furniture, green tablecloths, and ornamental plants. Such rooms emphasize the luxury of ocean liners of the early 20th century, designed for wealthy passengers. The daisugi technique, which originated in Japan in the 14th century, made it possible to obtain wood without cutting down trees. Instead of cutting down the trunks, they were carefully pruned, growing new shoots right on the old base, like a giant bonsai. This method provided future generations with building materials while preserving forests. Calamity Jane, 1901. A famous frontier scout and participant in the Indian Wars, she became a legend of the Wild West. Her image combined real-life military service and numerous myths created by popular culture. Construction of the I-55 highway, 1972. Steel rods made from recycled automobile parts were used to reinforce the road surface. This project reflects early recycling practices in U.S. infrastructure work. 164 ton of money, October 10, 1949. The photo shows the Glasswax Company's promotional campaign, which showed a profit of $423,129 or $13 earned over the year on the sale of glass cleaner. The money was piled up for clarity, highlighting the brand's commercial success. The armored cruiser SMS Blucher turns over after being hit by about 7 torpedoes and more than 70 305mm shells fired by British ships in the Battle of Dogger Bank on January 24, 1915. The ship was fatally damaged and sank, killing more than 700 sailors. This battle became an important episode of the naval war in the North Sea in the First World War. A young woman, not yet known as Marilyn Monroe, with a partially assembled OQ-2 radio plane target drone. Van Nuys, California, June 26, 1945. At that time, she was working at a military factory where she was spotted by an Army photographer, which was the beginning of her path to fame. An American tank, M4 Sherman, moves past crash gliders in Normandy, 1944. The picture was taken shortly after the Allied landings on D-Day, when airborne troops used gliders to transfer people and equipment behind the front line. A specially made bus to protect Jewish passengers from attacks during the Arab uprising in Palestine in the 1930s. The car was reinforced with metal grills and armor to ensure safety during transportation. Such buses were used during the British Mandate period. In ancient Rome, small white stones called tiger eyes were sometimes embedded among the cobblestones on the roads. They reflected the light of the moon, or torches, and helped travelers distinguish the way at night. This technique can be considered an early form of road marking. A resident of Highland, New Guinea meets Europeans for the first time, 1930. For his community, this was the first contact with the outside world after centuries of complete isolation. The picture became a rare evidence of a clash between two civilizations. The Bell UH-1D Huey helicopter of the U.S. Army prepares for a supply mission during Operation MacArthur, South Vietnam, December 1967. On the ground, soldiers of the 1st Battalion of the 8th Infantry Regiment marked the landing area with smoke. These operations were key to supporting the units in the jungle. American athletes before participating in the National Olympic Games in Barcelona, 1936. These competitions were organized as an alternative to the Olympic Games in Berlin, held under the auspices of Nazi Germany. The Games never took place due to the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War. Petrified coral transformed into agate shows patterns resembling small flowers. Such formations were formed millions of years ago, when minerals gradually replaced the organic tissues of corals. Today they are valued as collectibles and jewelry. A police helicopter hovers over the crowded Far Rockaway Beach in New York, July 4, 1953. The picture was taken by the famous photojournalist Margaret Bourke White. The frame shows a massive celebration of Independence Day and new methods of aerial control. Former slaves at General Lafayette's headquarters, guarded by Union soldiers circa 1862. Such photographs were called contraband images, which was the name given to runaway slaves who had found protection in the Northern armies. The photograph became one of the first visual evidence of the changing status of African Americans during the Civil War. The Roman bathhouse in Henschel, Algeria, has been operating for over 2,000 years. Built during the Empire era, it is still used by the locals. This monument demonstrates the longevity of Roman architecture and engineering. Korean girls play the traditional game neltwigi, a kind of swing on a board, the end of the 19th century. One jumps up to throw the other up. This game was popular among women during the Joseon dynasty. In the Middle Ages, Bologna was a city of towers. There were about 180 of them by 1200. The tallest reached 97 meters and has survived to the present day, having completed its construction in 1119. These towers served as symbols of wealth and fortified homes of noble families. Shirley Temple, one of Hollywood's most popular child actresses of the 1930s, pictured with officers of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The picture was taken in the mid-1930s, when her popularity spread far beyond the United States. Tunisian Felaga, armed with a long rifle and traditional daggers, poses against a wall, 1880s. These rebels embodied resistance to the colonial government and preserved the traditions of armed struggle. The Confederate House in Brazil, built by immigrants from the United States after the Civil War, 1870s. Thousands of Southerners fled here to preserve slavery, which was illegal in America. Their descendants still live in Brazil, and the city of Americana grew out of one of these colonies. Ginkgo, over 1,400 years old, in the mountains of Zhongnan, China. Every autumn, its leaves turn golden, turning the courtyard of the temple into a shining sea of gold. The tree is considered a symbol of longevity and a guardian of the history of the Tang Dynasty. The Great Oklahoma Land Race, 1893. Thousands of settlers raced by horse and cart to occupy the free lands opened by the U.S. government. This event became one of the most massive and chaotic migrations on the American frontier. The photo shows the first ever PAF pickup, patent applied for, created by Seth Laver in 1955 for Gibson. It was he who applied for a patent, and this prototype became the basis of the legendary humbucker. Today the original is kept in the Seymour Duncan collection. The photo shows a Viking axe before and after restoration. Beneath the layer of rust, there were complex geometric patterns made by blacksmiths more than 1,000 years ago. The restoration allowed us to see the weapon not only as a combat tool, but also as a work of art. In the 1920s and 30s, cars in the United States were often lifted directly into buildings through windows or special openings. In the photo, workers lower the car down wooden rails mounted on a truck to deliver it from the upper floor. In 1940, during the Blitz, German bombing raids destroyed British cities. Postmen continued to deliver letters even to the ruins of houses. It became a symbol of indomitable discipline and faith in order in the midst of the chaos of war. In 1982, Atari released the game E.T., which was created in just 5 weeks and became a symbol of the industry's failure. The game was so unsuccessful that the company buried hundreds of thousands of cartridges in a landfill in Alamogordo, New Mexico. In 2014, the burial site was found and confirmed by archaeologists and documentary filmmakers. On the night of February 24, 1942, panic hit Los Angeles, as weather balloons, mistaken for Japanese planes, were spotted in the sky. More than 1,400 shells were fired at the city, but there was no enemy. The incident went down in history as the Battle for Los Angeles, claiming the lives of 5 people in accidents and heart attacks. In 1990, George W. Bush joked about his father, the President of the United States, during a warm-up before jogging at Fort McNair. He put his foot on his father's chest, who was lying on the ground, and posed for photographers. At that time, the younger Bush was a co-owner of the Texas Rangers baseball team. Muslim soldiers of the Russian Imperial Army performed prayer on the Austrian front, September 1914. Representatives of different nations, including Tatars and Caucasians, served in the army. Their spiritual needs were respected even during the war. George Washington's teeth were not wooden, as the myth says. His prostheses were made of ivory, lead, gold, and human teeth. In 1784, Washington even paid his slaves for 9 of their teeth used in his dentures. An American M4A2 Sherman tank carries a damaged Japanese Type 94 light tank on Namur Island in 1944. The scene reflects the practice of using captured equipment for evacuation and analysis. The battles in the Marshall Islands became an important stage in the U.S. advance in the Pacific Campaign. American Marines after the Battle of Cape Gloucester, January 1944. The battle took place on New Britain and was part of a campaign to isolate the Japanese base of Rabaul. In the photo, the soldiers look exhausted, holding a captured Japanese flag in their hands. After the Japanese surrender in 1945, many soldiers refused to surrender and continued to hide for years. The most famous was Officer Hiro Onoda, who stayed in the Philippines until 1974, when his commander personally convinced him to stop resisting. The last confirmed was Teruo Nakamura, who surrendered in December 1974. The greenstone in Hattusa, the capital of the Hittite kingdom, destroyed around 1200 BC. It is made of serpentinite and was probably used in religious rituals. Its significance still remains a mystery to historians. The Laika dog became the first living being launched into space aboard Sputnik 2 in 1957. The USSR did not provide for her return to Earth, and Laika died in orbit. This flight became an important stage in the development of cosmonautics. The sunken Britannic, the sister ship of the Titanic, became the largest ship lost in the First World War. He died in 1916 after being blown up by a mine in the Aegean Sea. His remains rest at a depth of only 120 meters, which makes them accessible to divers. Katherine Johnson is an African-American mathematician whose calculations of trajectories and orbits became key to NASA's first manned space missions, including John Glenn's flight in 1962. Her work helped ensure the safety and success of the Mercury program and subsequent missions. In 1955, 67-year-old Emma Rawana Gatewood walked the entire 3,090-kilometer Appalachian Trail without equipment and training, becoming the first woman to do it alone. She used simple clothes, sneakers, and a makeshift bag, proving that expensive things are not needed for the feat. The Tower House is Scotland's oldest permanently inhabited house, built around 1107. In the engraving from 1815 and in the photograph from 2024, the building looks almost unchanged, retaining the original towers and facade. This house has survived kings, rebellions, and wars, remaining a family residence for 900 years. London, circa 1900. A street vendor of matches, disabled due to polio, is trying to survive on the streets in conditions of Victorian poverty. For many poor people, selling small items was the only source of income in an era when social assistance was virtually non-existent. Ella Williams, born 1865, known by her stage name Madame Abomach, was an American actress of extraordinary height and strength. At the end of the 19th century, she gained worldwide fame by performing in circuses and variety shows as the African Gigantess. Xar Dra in Timimoun, Algeria, ancient ruins towering in the midst of the endless sand dunes of the Sahara. Once this fortified settlement served as an important point on trade routes, but today it looks like a mysterious fortress preserved in the heart of the desert. A rare photo of two young men with a sign saying, "Not married but willing to be," circa 1900. In that era, such photographs were almost never taken due to strict laws and social norms. The Great Temple of Rameses II in Abu Simbel was built around 1264 BC in Lower Nubia. 4 giant statues of the pharaoh, carved directly into the rock, symbolized his power and divinity. In the 20th century, the entire complex was moved to a new location to save it from flooding during the construction of the Aswan Dam. Here is a 4,000-year-old Sumerian birth certificate found in Iraq. On the left is a clay footprint of a child's foot. On the right is a cuneiform tablet. These documents confirmed the birth of the child and secured his legal status in society. David Reimer, 1965 to 2004, was born a boy, but after an unsuccessful operation, doctors insisted on raising him as a girl named Brenda. At the age of 15, he rejected the imposed identity and returned to male life. His case has become a symbol of the failure of medical experiments on gender. Chicago, January 1915. The Eureka building turned into an ice fortress after firefighters extinguished the fire in sub-zero temperatures. The streams of water instantly froze, covering the facade with massive icicles. Genetic studies have shown that Tutankhamun's parents were close relatives, probably brother and sister. His father is almost certainly Pharaoh Akhenaten, and his mother remains unknown, but has been identified as one of Akhenaten's sisters. In 1947, a young Marilyn Monroe played a waitress in her first film, Dangerous Years. In the photo, she smiles at her co-star, Donald Curtis. This role was the beginning of her path to fame. In 1951, Audrey Hepburn made her Broadway debut in the play Gigi. In the photo, she fixes the letters with her name on the theater poster. This moment was the beginning of her meteoric rise to world fame. The Vietnam War gave rise to a special unit of tunnel rats, soldiers who descended into the narrow underground passages of the Viet Cong with a pistol and a flashlight. Their task was to find weapons depots, headquarters, and eliminate ambushes, encountering not only the enemy, but also traps, venomous snakes, and scorpions. At the height of the civil rights movement, opponents of Martin Luther King tried to associate his name with communism. During the March to Selma in 1965, such billboards were placed along the roads to undermine his reputation and deprive him of support. The headline in the Wall Street Journal on February 1, 1933, shortly after Hitler came to power, reflected investors' confidence that his appointment would not disrupt Germany's stability. The stock's rise was interpreted as a sign of calm, but history has shown how wrong these expectations were. In 1963, France sent a cat named Félicette into space, selected from among the street animals for an experiment. She was launched on a Veronique rocket and returned safely to Earth after a short flight. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh made the first ever non-stop solo flight across the Atlantic on a Spirit of St. Louis aircraft. He took off from New York and landed in Paris 33.5 hours later, having covered about 5,800 kilometers. This flight made Lindbergh a global celebrity and became a turning point in the history of aviation. In 1932, Charles Lindbergh's son was abducted from the family home, leaving a note with demands. Despite negotiations and payment of the ransom, the child was later found dead, which shocked the whole country. This crime went down in history as the case of the century and led to stricter laws on kidnapping in the United States. A 1946 airline ticket advertisement offered a flight to New York for just $14.90, which is 98 minutes on the way. Adjusted for inflation, such a price today would be about $241, which is still amazing compared to current airfares. A tram from Hiroshima, burned down after the atomic bombing in 1945, has been preserved as evidence of the destruction. Years later, it was restored, and today it continues to run on the line, becoming a symbol of the city's rebirth. During World War II, the United States produced posters emphasizing Allied relations with the USSR and China. Americans were reminded, "This man is your friend, he is fighting for freedom." A few years later, during the Cold War, these countries became the main rivals of the United States. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, cosmetics contained truly dangerous ingredients. Here is an advertisement for soap with arsenic added, which was offered for a beautiful complexion and acne control. Today it is known that this is the strongest poison, but then such products were considered a fashionable means of care. Marilyn Monroe in 1953, at a party hosted by musician Ray Anthony, where she met the famous dog Lassie. That same evening, Anthony performed the song Marilyn, dedicated to her. Advertising of Bayer pharmaceutical products, the beginning of the 20th century. Back then, heroin was freely offered as a cough sedative, along with aspirin and other drugs. Such drugs were considered safe until later it became clear about their serious consequences. At the beginning of the 20th century, electricity was a novelty, and people had to explain that lamps did not need to be lit with a match. They even hung signs, assuring the guests that the light from electricity does not harm their health and does not interfere with sleep. In the 1950s, airlines often distributed cigarettes to passengers right along with the food on board. The photo shows a Philip Morris branded pack from Braniff Airways, when smoking in the cabin was considered the norm. In the 1930s, renting an apartment in New York could cost as little as $4 per week, about $74 today, or $25 per month, less than $500. For comparison, currently renting a room in Manhattan will cost about $2,000, excluding utilities. This is one of the first cars in history, the Carl Benz motor sidecar, created in 1885. A three-wheeled car with a gasoline internal combustion engine became the prototype of all future cars and marked the beginning of the global automotive industry. In 1938, Henry Ford was awarded the Order of the German Eagle, the highest award of Nazi Germany for foreigners. The award was presented by official representatives of the Third Reich in the United States, and this fact became one of the most controversial pages of his biography. A ticket to the legendary Woodstock Festival in 1969 cost only $7, which, adjusted for inflation, is equivalent to about $60 today. Then the event gathered about 400,000 people and became one of the symbols of the era. In 1853, Elisha Otis demonstrated the first safe passenger elevator, showing the public that its mechanism would prevent the cabin from falling, even if the cable broke. This moment marked the beginning of the massive construction of high-rise buildings. London Chinatown, at Limehouse, 1927. The area, known for its Chinese secret societies and tea houses, became a source of inspiration for Arthur Conan Doyle, Oscar Wilde, and Charles Dickens. One of the first Taco Bell restaurants opened in 1962 in Downey, California. The chain began as a small diner with a Mexican-American flavor and later turned into an international fast food giant. The bulletin of the Austrian referendum on April 10, 1938, held after the Anschluss, Residents were asked to confirm Austria's reunification with the Third Reich and vote for Hitler's list. The result was about 99% in favor, but the vote was held under Nazi control and was not considered free. New Zealand soldiers during the Second World War look out of the windows of the train going to the service. The carriages are painted with inscriptions like "Breather before busting Benito," an allusion to Mussolini, and the names of cities. The 6th Field Artillery Regiment from Camp Papakura is listed on board. Photo. Family in the living room, USA, 1930s. The participants are holding in their hands popular sheet music and song collections at that time. Among them are The Grizzly Bear, Peanuts, and Animal Crackers. Such musical evenings were a common way of leisure before the widespread spread of radio and television. Japanese fishermen during the mass tuna fishing, 1938. The fishing was carried out with harpoons from wooden boats, which required the coordinated work of dozens of people. Scenes like this reflected the importance of fishing to coastal communities and Japan's pre-war economy. The American naval airship L-8, 1942. During a patrol off the coast of California, a 2-man crew disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The aircraft continued to fly without control and landed in a suburb of San Francisco. This incident went down in history as the Ghost Blimp. Partially sunken Japanese battleship, 1945. Many ships of the Imperial Japanese Navy were sunk or heavily damaged by U.S. airstrikes in the final months of World War II. Such wreckage has become a symbol of the collapse of Japan's naval power. Army cadets demonstrate various types of disguises in 1943. The photo shows how soldiers use face and body coloring to blend in with the terrain, a practice that significantly increases efficiency in the field. Abraham Lincoln's hearse passes under a decorative arch on Chicago's 12th Street, May 1st, 1865. Women in white accompany the coffin mounted on a cart, and the decorated arch symbolizes the solemn and mourning atmosphere of farewell to the deceased president. Robert Goddard with his first liquid rocket, 1926. On March 16th, she climbed 12 meters and flew 56 meters in 2.5 seconds. This launch became the starting point of modern cosmonautics. Annette Kellerman in a one-piece swimsuit, 1907. She was arrested in Boston for obscenity because the costume exposed her arms and legs. This case made her a symbol of the struggle for the freedom of women's sportswear. Mississippi, circa 1939. An African-American man climbs the stairs to the cinema through a separate entrance marked with a sign, "Colored Entrance." Such restrictions were part of the system of racial segregation that operated in the United States in the first half of the 20th century. The Kowloon-walled city in Hong Kong, 1989. On an area of only 2.6 hectares, up to 50,000 people lived here, making it one of the most densely populated places in the world. Built chaotically without the control of the authorities, the quarter has turned into a maze of narrow passages connected by houses and stairs. It was demolished in 1993, but it has always remained a symbol of extreme urban life. The Fenelon Place funicular in Dubuque, Iowa, built in 1882 by banker J.K. Graves, is considered one of the shortest and steepest in the world. Its length is only about 90 meters, with an elevation of 57 meters at an angle of 41 degrees. Initially, it was used by the owner for personal needs, and since 1884 it has become a public transport. A pocket knife from the Persian Gulf War is equipped with an anthrax warning. At that time, there were fears of the use of biological weapons in the United States and among its allies. Many military personnel have been vaccinated against anthrax to reduce possible risks. Escape chute during fire training, USA, 1943. This device was a flexible fabric sleeve that was attached to the windows and allowed people to quickly leave the building. It was installed in schools, hospitals, and administrative buildings as an alternative to traditional fire escapes. The design provided a controlled downward slide and was considered safer for children and women. The ancient Roman aqueducts were built from the 4th century BC and supplied the cities with millions of liters of water daily, using only gravity. They were built of stone and concrete with a minimal slope, which ensured a continuous flow. Many of them, such as the Segovia Aqueduct in Spain, have been standing for almost 2,000 years without mortar, held together only by precise fitting of the blocks. Old and new routes of Highway 61, Central Pennsylvania, 1990s. After the start of an underground fire in the central coal mines, a section of Route 61 collapsed and was closed. Traffic was moved to a bypass road, and the destroyed section was named Graffiti Highway and was finally filled in 2020. Maria Spelterini, 1876. An Italian tightrope walker has become the first and only woman to walk over the Niagara Gorge on a stretched steel rope. Her performances were part of the program celebrating the centennial of the United States. Later, she repeated the transitions blindfolded, handcuffed, and even in baskets on her feet, demonstrating skill and courage. An Antarctic explorer faces winds of about 100 miles per hour, 1911-1914. The picture was taken by photographer Frank Hurley during Douglas Mawson's Australasian Antarctic expedition. The filming location is Cape Denison, where some of the strongest katabatic winds on the planet were recorded. A sailor scoops up plankton on his way to Antarctica, circa 1912. The picture was taken during Douglas Mawson's Australasian Antarctic expedition, which aimed to explore the southern oceans and collect biological samples. This work helped to lay the foundations of modern knowledge about the marine ecology of Antarctica. A large catch is unloaded onto the pier around 1950. During this period, fishing vessels delivered the catch directly to the port, where the fish were sorted and processed manually. Mass unloading was a common occurrence in coastal cities, providing the market with fresh fish before the advent of modern industrial trawlers. Oas, Tomb of Tutankhamun, Egypt, 1922. After the discovery of Howard Carter by archaeologists, the room turned out to be filled with everyday objects and furniture stacked close together. Unlike the idea of untold treasures, the find showed a more modest and cramped arrangement, although the number of items was huge. Iwo Jima, February 1945. Joe Rosenthal's shot Gung Ho captured a group of Marines from Company E after raising the flag atop Suribachi. There are 18 people in the photo, including Ira Hayes and Navy orderlies. An artist of the Bertram Mills Circus tames a lion during a tour, Great Britain, 1936. Photographer Edward Maylinden captured the moment when the trainer shows the audience a risky act with a predator. Such performances in the interwar years were considered one of the main sensations of European circuses. The Tesla Tower in Wardenclyffe, Long Island, New York, 1904. The facility was created by Nikola Tesla to experiment with wireless transmission of energy and signals. Funding stopped in 1906, and the project was finally closed and dismantled in 1917. English Staplejack has been operating without insurance since about 1960. The photo shows a worker climbing up a chimney without a safety belt or other protective equipment. At that time, the profession of staplejacking was considered one of the most dangerous, and the use of modern security measures had not yet been applied. Ormer Locklear performs a stunt on the wing of a Curtiss JN-4D aircraft, circa 1919-1920. He became one of the first pilots to master the risky direction of show aviation, wing walking, when the pilot moved along the wing in flight. Such performances quickly gained popularity in the United States, making Locklear a well-known figure of the barnstorming era. Residents of the village of Bavamataloyo on the island of Nias, circa 1915. Men transport a huge megalith designed for ritual and public buildings. Lifting and carrying such stones required hundreds of participants and was accompanied by traditional rituals. The Nias culture is known for preserving unique megalithic practices right up to the 20th century. A license printed on cloth, Halifax, 1920s. In England during this period, some official documents, including driver's licenses and permits, were issued on durable fabric. This material made them more durable and resistant to wear compared to paper. Please subscribe to the channel and write your opinion in the comments. I will be very grateful, and you can also financially support me.